apart from the legislative aspect, we really need to do more education. And how should that best be done? Because most employers, I would hope, are good employers. And so we're dealing with circumstance, pressure. Well, where's the kicker? Where's the problem?
The problem is that the problem is there's competing interests. Right? The employer's interest is to minimise labour cost.
Well, you mentioned...
So they roster to the minimum. You're not going to roster...
So it's a resource matter?
Huh?
It's a resource matter?
Yeah, it's an incredibly competitive industry, and there's big demands from usually overseas owners. But
you said it's not a management, it's not a top management.
At the top management, they claim that this is what they want to happen. That's true. However, we've just had an example, same thing with restaurant brands, where the situation got radically better arrest times. But again, they've come through just in the recent months with a shift from a more flexible hours where management could control the hours to a fixed hours thing per store. So now we have a situation where they're clocking people, well, I bring about today from several stores, where they're clocking people off at 11 p.m. and not paying them to do the clean-up because they've run out of their hours. Now, of course, that's completely illegal, and we'll come back at it. But it's that enormous pressure on the managers that now they've got fixed hours. You know, now they can't go over it. If they go over it, they're in trouble. It's that constant. KFC used to have a customer per hour, so very strict. But, you know, this is, and they would have managers sitting on their computers watching the stores and counting the customers going in, and then ringing the stores and saying, cut down on your labour allocation. That's how obsessive some of the area managers and so on have been. Very, very enormous pressure to meet these minimum labour targets. Never allows, it doesn't allow for coverage for the breaks, in my view. They've got better. Because of the law, they got better. You know, they knew we'd be coming after them a lot more, give us more leverage, all the rest of it. The law made it better. But it's still a gigantic problem.
Yeah, they ain't going to be fixed in a hurry.
No, still, so education, but you can't do the budget, you can't do the budgets for these. So there's got to be a right that's clear. It talks about right, reasonable for it.
Probably all right.
Our members wouldn't, what's reasonable?
Well, but this is why I'm grateful that you give the presentation, because for office situations it's a bit different. Sorry. Thank you.
Thanks for the submission. And can you, obviously you've had several years of trying to negotiate these provisions into collective agreements. Do you think you're going to be sitting down at the table with the various fast food companies if this rule comes into place with a claim on the table to reduce meals and rest breaks entitlements?
We did have a claim at the beginning of this year's McDonald's negotiations to reintroduce youth rates and reduce the rest break from 15 to 10. And there was a small clawback on the rest breaks that when the law changes, the minimum entitlement will go to 2 to 3 hours. So yes, they will. If there's an additional reduction in legal entitlements, I think there'll be additional claims in future negotiations to give them the flexibility. When the new law was announced that they were going to change this rest break law, McDonald's and their franchisees publicly embraced that and said that they welcomed that because it would give them, again, more flexibility. So it's public in the media. In the negotiations, they didn't even actually raise it as a serious demand this year, except for the 10 going from 15 to 10 minutes. But we were able to include in this year's collective agreement, which we've just signed, a clause, a breaks clause that is more in line with the old law. But if the old law doesn't exist, then we're going to have problems, I'm sure. They never liked the law, and in many ways, and in the McDonald's agreement, they never, even though the law had changed and the contract wording was different from the old law, they never did a reprint or changes or put notices up to say what the legal entitlements were versus what the contractual entitlements were. They didn't like it, but...
Thank you, Mike. Did you also introduce your two colleagues?
Taylor is a KFC worker in, McDonald's, worker by McDonald's workers at New Zealand, and T Street McDonald's. Sean Taylor is a McDonald's worker at T Street.
And how have you both found like working within those companies? Do they generally have work practice, or do you find that the employers got a lot of pressure on them and they try and avoid it?
Well, there is a lot of pressure. Like today, just my shift at 12, surprisingly, I get my break. And it was only a 5-hour shift. And the way that they're trying to give me my break was like 1 hour after I'd started, and they're trying to give me my break 15 minutes before I finish.
So there's no 15 minutes.
So,
So they still make up time on that.
yeah.
Yeah, I find the same thing. Like I work at the store in Lindenburg, and I find a lot of the time, not only me, but all of my colleagues and staff, they miss their breaks too. And it's not just you actually get told, no, you can't take your break now, we're too busy, or you don't want to take your break, you get told you don't want to take your break now because there's other staff and they need you, and you get like the managers, if you're friends with the manager, they're like, you can't leave me, that all that sort of stuff. Like, I'm a part-time worker at McDonald's, I'm still in school. In school, I get a 20-minute break and a 45-minute break, and not only does that help to like make me focus again, but it helps with the social aspect as well. I see in my workplace people that have been off work for a while, or people that, you know, they don't communicate well with the other staff. They're the ones that are getting isolated, they're getting discriminated against. Like breaks are, for me personally, really important to be able to ensure that people are getting along, to ensure that people are not going to have like stupid discriminations and isolations because they're not known as well as everybody else. And not only that, but the fact that it gives you a chance to be able to recollect yourself. And like McDonald's is a fast-paced, high-stressful work, and